What happens when surveillance power meets politics? This exchange raises a question every American should be paying attention to.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and General, thank you for your career of service to the United States, and congratulations on your nomination to this important post. Before I engage with you, I just want to note for the committee that my constituents in Georgia, and I think much of the American public, are quite reasonably alarmed and asking questions after the Director of National Intelligence was spotted bizarrely and personally lurking in an FBI evidence truck in Fulton County, Georgia, yesterday. So I encourage all of us on a bipartisan basis to pursue the facts as swiftly as possible to understand whether the Office of the Director of National Intelligence is straying far outside of its lane. Related. I regret to share my observation that the president at this point is clearly using federal law enforcement in order to pursue personal vendettas. That has nothing to do with you and your career to date, nor is it something for which I hold you accountable or would expect you to explain. But it is a well-known fact, and it quite reasonably, given the immense surveillance capabilities of the National Security Agency, raises the concern that there might be some abuse of the NSA's authorities. And so my question for you is that if there is some alteration or withdrawal of current prohibitions, administrative prohibitions, on surveillance targeting Americans, for example, in Executive Order 1233, PPD 28, USSID 18, or otherwise, will you promptly inform this committee with our oversight responsibilities of such a change?
Senator, I will pledge, if confirmed, to ensure that the NSA executes its mission within the authorities and all applicable laws, and that I will execute the duties of this position that enables this committee to exercise its oversight responsibilities.
General, I appreciate the answer, and I want you to think a little bit more deeply about the question and consult with your team and follow up with more precision for the record, because the challenge I'm identifying is that you may be asked to do things that are manifestly unethical and improper, but following some alteration of present administrative policy may indeed be lawful. And this committee needs to know if such administrative policies, which currently protect American civil liberties but are not in statute, are changed. And my view would be that under existing law, anyone in the seat that you hope to hold would have a statutory obligation to inform this committee of any such change. So I hope to get some more detail beyond boilerplate on that for the record. You will also be taking this post, General, if confirmed. So can I get a commitment that you will respond with a more fulsome answer for the record, please, General?
Senator, I look forward to looking into that topic and responding to you.
Thank you. If confirmed, you'll take this post after a series of events that suggest a crisis for information security and operational security practices in the federal government. You had the Secretary of Defense inadvertently text strike details to a national political reporter, including time over target for U.S. aircrews before those U.S. aircrews had launched into hostile enemy airspace. Multiple major news outlets were reportedly aware of the imminent raid targeting Maduro in Venezuela before the raid was executed. This week, here's a headline from Politico: Trump's acting cyber chief uploaded sensitive files into a public version of ChatGPT. NSA has a crucial role supporting information security, cryptographic integrity, and best practices across the federal government. How will you, in your role, constructively address these many failures and the broader problem of information security failures in the federal government?
Senator, I recognize the critical role that NSA plays in this space, and certainly, if confirmed, I pledge to ensure that it continues to execute its mission to its fullest.
Thank you, General.
There's a line in government that's supposed to be crystal clear. National security and political power are not the same thing. But what you just heard is what it sounds like when that line starts to blur. A senator raises concerns, not casually, not hypothetically, but directly. talking about the possibility that federal law enforcement could be used for personal or political purposes. And whether you agree with that claim or not, the question that follows is the one that really matters. What happens if the rules change? Because agencies like the National Security Agency don't just operate on laws passed by Congress. They also operate on internal policies, executive orders, and administrative safeguards. And those safeguards are often the last line of defense for everyday Americans. Things like limits on surveillance, protections against targeting U.S. citizens, guidelines that determine what can and cannot be collected. Now here's the part that should make you stop and think. Those protections can be changed, not always by Congress, sometimes by the executive branch. And that's exactly what the senator is getting at. If those guardrails are quietly adjusted, if the definition of what's allowed shifts, something that used to be clearly wrong could suddenly become technically legal. Let that sink in. Not necessarily ethical, not necessarily right, but legal. And that's why the question wasn't just about policy, it was about transparency. Will Congress be told? Will the public know? Or will those changes happen behind closed doors, justified in the name of national security? Because history has shown that surveillance power, when left unchecked, doesn't just stay in one lane, it expands. It adapts. And sometimes it's used in ways the public never intended. Then the conversation shifts, and it reveals another layer of concern: operational security. Because while we're talking about surveillance and intelligence, we're also hearing about something else entirely. Sensitive information being mishandled, details of military operations being exposed, classified or high-risk data ending up in places it should never be. And that's where the contradiction becomes impossible to ignore. On one hand, the government has some of the most advanced intelligence capabilities in the world. On the other hand, there are repeated concerns about basic information security. And that raises a bigger question. If the system can't consistently protect its own secrets, how can it guarantee the protection of yours? Because ultimately, this isn't just about agencies or policies, it's about trust. Trust that the immense power of surveillance will not be abused. Trust that safeguards won't quietly disappear. Trust that oversight isn't just a formality, but a real check on authority. And when answers start to sound like boilerplate,